So what's the collective IQ between Monk and Jimtalksdata here?
I wouldn't try to guess.
Less and less.
Less and less?
If every checking of Twitter and every beer I need afterwards. So.
Welcome to Buy My Bag, the podcast with the highest collective IQ. This is episode 4, featuring Jimtalksdata and Damian, just two of the many brilliant minds behind one of the most grassroots projects in crypto, Bismuth. And if you've tuned in before, you're familiar with our panel, Chase, Monk, and Red. We're also here to join in on the discussion. Jim and Damian will start it off by telling us a few things about themselves, and then they'll introduce Bismuth. So without further ado, here's Jim.
So I'm Jim, also known as Jimtalksdata around the parts. So I'm actually a pathologist practicing here in Texas, but I got into crypto sometime like around 2014. Just looking at the blockchain and like decentralized computing as like something that seemed to be really interesting to me. So that's where I started like doing researching. And around like 2016, 2017, I tried to really broaden my social media exposure. Don't know if that was a good decision in retrospect, but it did let me meet a number of really talented developers and users, including the people at Bismuth. So I guess it's a net win for me.
Thanks, Jim. And you, Damian?
Yeah, sure. So I am Damian, aka bitsignal, and I started out. I stumbled about the Bitcoin white paper early on, and I was fascinated about possibility to do permissionless transactions worldwide, no matter where you live or how much money you have, or if you have a bank account or not. So from there on, I was only interested in Bitcoin because the altcoins didn't make any sense to me because there were hardly any transactions on Bitcoin itself. So and ever since then, all of a sudden, the first application platform appeared, and I thought that's a really nice idea to being able to have applications on top of a cryptocurrency. So and then I was interested in ETH. But with the CryptoKitties application, it sounded to me like it's starting to get very crowded on their network, and I was looking for something else which could potentially have a better design. So I investigated and stumbled upon an article in May 2017, and I read about Bismuth, and ever since then I participated in the community, and I have a YouTube channel, and in this YouTube channel I am talking about Bismuth and trying to get the users to understand more about the platform. So that's about me.
Awesome. Thank you, Damian.
Hey, Jim, can you just talk about how you got involved with Bismuth too?
So I actually found out about Bismuth again around the same time as Damian did back in May 2017. Not a lot of people know this, but Bismuth was actually launched 11 months ago prior to that date as like a testnet. So I think I was like in the very last phases of that testnet when they started to like migrate over to main So that's around where I found out, and it was on the Bitcoin Talks forum as well.
Tell us about Bismuth, if you would, Jim.
Bismuth, it's like the most general form is basically a decentralized app platform built on Python as the main scripting language. It's a completely new blockchain. It's not based on the Bitcoin or Ethereum or other code bases. So it's completely built from scratch. The network is from scratch as well, and it uses proof of work as well as a hypernode / masternode staking system that Damian can probably talk about later. But it also has a number of decentralized applications that are currently built on it and are currently working, unlike many other blockchains. So that's just a really quick summary.
Great. Thank you. Now for questions. Chase, you're up.
Sure. I think one of the big questions a lot of people have is just about why, like with the age of Bismuth, why it hasn't been more successful or marketed more, or I guess maybe just it's not as the usage isn't as widespread as some other platforms as far as integrating with bigger businesses and stuff like that. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on why that might be the case.
So I think that the success also depends on many factors. And if you have, for example, Bismuth, it was completely, like Jim said, completely written or coded from scratch, which means that the first thing is that you have to do everything new. That means the main developer, Jan, he developed the code bases on RSA encryption, and this is not very widely used within the cryptocurrency space. They're mostly using ECDSA, and if you use ECDSA, you have a big advantage because the infrastructure is much more further ahead for generating keys and for many things. So I think, and also if you have a new platform, new coders, they are maybe hesitant because they don't know if the platform is going to make it or not. So they rather stick to platforms like Ethereum or whatever because they want to be successful, and it also takes a lot of time and work to get to know a new platform. And Bismuth is a completely new platform. That means that you have also learned more than if you maybe use a platform which, you have less risk, I would say. No? And but this is going to change because more and more developers are joining the Bismuth ecosystem, and I'm seeing already that there are, like with every month, we get more developers who are participating, who are writing code, who are patching bugs. And the Bismuth ecosystem is growing. If you only look at the price, at the current price, okay, I can say it's maybe not successful, but it's only the current moment, and this will change if more developers are joining and more applications are being written, so users can actually have an incentive to use Bismuth.
What are some ongoing current app projects, either by internal devs or by people from the community?
Well, we have a very big project, which is, for example, Dragonator, and it's been there a while. And it's a French developer who's working on that plugin, or we call it Crystal. And the good part is, for example, those plugins, they run completely independent from. Not all the nodes have to run the code. It's a private contract, and that's why the scaling in Bismuth is not really a problem, because not every node has to run the code from a certain plugin. That means that only the involved nodes who want to run that plugin can run that plugin. And Dragonator is, I think, a very good example. And we're having tournaments, Dragon tournaments, and it's working great so far.
Bismuth seems to be a technical person's wet dream. There's a lot to like from the perspective of a developer. I'm wondering what, if anything, will be done to increase the appeal to the layman user base, I guess. Does it simply mean more conventional crypto marketing campaign? Because I'd fear you'd have to hire a dedicated doorman of sorts to field all the when moon questions, if that's the case. How do you view that?
So I can actually start commenting on that as well. Expanding on some of Damian's comments. So about the RSA, I think there are some recent news that I haven't completely read up on, but they are implementing ECDSA support.
We have already. We have.
Yeah, so that's one thing that Bismuth is doing right now. As far as really encouraging developers, I think that's really important. And one part of that, there's a TED Talk by Seth Godin, which is one of the early Silicon Valley VCs. And basically his thesis is that projects should do things that are remarkable, and that they should do things that have people remark about whether or not they're great or terrible or scary or unusual. And one of the things to do that is that you market to the fringes, basically the innovators and early adopters. In our cases, would be like Python developers that would build on a platform, and that would be encouraged to build based on the technical abilities or the fact that Bismuth is the first Python blockchain. And using through that, then you can attract regular users that would be attracted to those app platforms, not necessarily to the technology on the Bismuth platform. So I think that's the so-called like marketing strategy going forward. But if Damian wants to add anything, just
Yeah, I completely agree with Jim that Python developers are very important because they are building plugins for the Bismuth cryptocurrency, and they are really liking it. They like the simplicity of it because it's like a Lego-like system where you can build on top on something without disturbing anyone else on the system, on the network. You can just start building for yourself, and then you see how it works without the network getting all distracted. Yeah. So and then after that, if you have developers who are liking the platform to build up on, if there are applications, users are going to use applications if they're interesting to them. So I think the first step is get the developers who want to try something else. They don't need to learn, for example, Solidity, like for Ethereum. And if they break something, they break the whole chain. That might happen. And with Bismuth, it does not happen because you are not messing with the chain itself. You're only building for if you do something wrong, or if your code is maybe has some errors in it. It does not disturb the main chain, the main proof of work chain of Bismuth. And I think that's a big advantage. And of course, we do not have any professional marketers at this time. And from time to time, some YouTube marketers are contacting me and asking if they should do something, some videos for Bismuth. And we decided at this time not to pay for marketing. That might change in the future, but at this time we are only paying for plugin developers, for example, if they have a good idea, or we paid for example, to be listed on an exchange, and we will be listed on more exchanges in the future. also on Asian exchanges. And right now we are on Qtrade and Gravix and Vinex.network. So those 3 exchanges. But I think we are first doing the infrastructure, and then if, of course, marketing, we see that marketing is very important, and we will address this issue also.
That's great, guys. That sort of leads into another question, if the rest of the panel don't mind me taking it. We've seen quite a few promising projects run into issues or completely run out of steam, primarily due to lack of funding, correlating directly to the overall market slump the past 16 months or so. How is the core business team positioned in terms of resources and being able to continue a commitment to development at the prospect of an extended period of market disinterest?
I can try comment on that as well a little. So basically, Bismuth has a funding model in which like there's a percentage of the blocks, I think it's right about 10% that goes to the development rewards fund, and then from the fund, rewards are sent to various developers. I mean, there's been a lot of debates about what the appropriate funding models per projects are, but in my personal view, a percentage development is not a bad way to fund projects, in that it avoids the kind of a loss of interest that can be seen with some fair launch projects, as well as adverse incentives that can be seen with projects that have like a 100% development pre-mine at the start. And so that's my personal view of the funding model of Bismuth. As far as what the funds are used for, maybe Damian can explain a little bit more.
Yes, so that's right. There was no ICO or pre-mine in Bismuth, and that's why there's a developer, well, there are rewards, developer rewards every 10th block, and it will be about, a total will be about 4.8 million, I think, in the year 2029. And those funds are being used, like I said before, for to get the project further. If we need to fund, for example, for an exchange to be listed on an exchange, we do this. We also the core developers are being funded depending on how much they work on the project, which you could see on GitHub. So there are different parts where the funds are being used for, and mainly for developers. And of course, exchanges, if it's needed. First, it was said that we're not going to use funds for exchanges, but it depends also, because you need exchanges to list the currency, the cryptocurrency. We thought that's also important. So, but mostly for plugin developers and core developers.
Great, thanks, guys.
For me, Bismuth is pretty typical as of the current state of the market of a project with good fundamentals, but like absolutely nightmarish price action, very low liquidity. So maybe this is a bit of a difficult question, but how does it feel to be part of a project that kind of like is depressed price-wise? How does it feel to drive on the fundamentals while kind of also maybe personally, but also through the behavior of the community being exposed to adverse price action?
Yeah, I mean, of course you look at the price, but to me it's very surprising that the team is very professional and they don't even talk about the price. They're only talking about their work and how they're advancing and what bugs needs to be addressed. And they're also, I mean, like 24/7 at the channel, and you always see them online, and they're working. They're doing their job, and everyone is doing their job. And of course, the price is low, but it could also be an opportunity. If the price would be low, if there would be a lot of volume, then I mean, I don't know what's better, if there's a lot of volume and the price is low, or if there's not a lot of volume and the price is low. So it always depends how you look at it. But to me, overall, I think the spirit is very good, and I'm very happy to be part of that, because early on it's always I mean, if you look back at Bitcoin in the beginnings, there was also not a lot volume going on, and well, after Mt. Gox opened, maybe then some volume started to pick up. But before that, there was maybe only a pizza being sold over the network. So to me, I enjoy the beginning of a cryptocurrency. Okay, we are now since 27. There's now 2 years of development and of action, and we are now maybe at our the lowest price. But I think you can learn from it, and it's very interesting that how the team reacts, and how they still have their vision and work towards the vision. And I think that's important to me.
So as far as like the price on my perspective, so Nick Carter over at Coinmetrics described basically various ways to look at fundamental prices for cryptocurrencies, including his idea of like network transaction volume calculation. And the thing about Bismuth's price action currently is that there hasn't been a lot of volume in the market overall. Basically, especially after Cryptopia closed down, so that the current price really isn't representative of the average holding prices across the entire marketplace. So I don't think anyone has done the actual data calculation on the Bismuth blockchain to get like a network transaction volume calculation. That might be something I'm interested in doing eventually, but basically, my perspective is that the price Bismuth right now doesn't represent the average holding prices of the entire marketplace.
I know recently there was a change in the block reward structure between hypernodes and miners, and I was wanting to see if you wouldn't mind going into that, and also what what are the plans or thoughts as far as how to handle the Cryptopia liquidation and everything that they're doing over there. I know it's been a hot topic of discussion in the Discord, but I just wanted to get y'all's thoughts on that and the reasoning for the change from block reward.
Yeah, I can first talk about the change of the hard fork. Within the hard fork, there was a change. 1.6 BIS was subtracted from the proof of work mining rewards and were added to the proof of stake hypernode operators. So the proof of stake hypernode operators now get 2.4 per block, and every 10th proof of work block you get then 24 BIS, and this 24 BIS then this adds up, and then at every Saturday, so every week, those BIS will be spread for all the hypernode operators, so spread out to all hypernode operators. And yeah, that's the change, because hypernode operators have an incentive maybe to buy more BIS. And right now, after the change, it was about 30% per year that the hypernode operators would receive from their invested BIS. And currently, I think it's about maybe 25% or something. But it's going down because the hypernode system, or the hypernode chain, it's a separate chain. It's a completely separate chain. And it's not like a usual masternode, because in Bismuth you have, first of all, the main chain, the proof of work main chain, and then the side chain, which is the proof of stake chain. And all hypernode operators do share share the rewards. So the more hypernode operators will will be there, the less you get. And right now, I think it's about 25%. I'm not exactly sure, but it goes down. The more nodes you have, hypernode nodes, the less you will get as a percentage. And the second thing, what happened at that hard fork, it was at block 1.2 million, was that ECDSA cryptographic primitives were added. That means that Bismuth now runs on RSA and it will keep running on RSA for the old addresses. So it will run on 2 schemes. And yeah, that's about it. And because ECDSA got added because then you have shorter addresses. They generate faster because we now have also a mobile application which was coded by Chainzilla, and RSA addresses also just take longer to generate, and that was one of the reasons why we changed our approach, that we would support 2 address schemes. And it's working so good so far. The network is now able to run addresses and send transactions from RSA address schemes to also ECDSA. So back and forth, that's not a problem now. So yeah.
What was the as far as like why there was a change in the way the reward structure worked? Could you go into that a little bit? Like why change it from the way it was as far as the split between nodes and miners? Was it just to incentivize the hypernodes more?
To incentivize the hypernodes more, because we are planning on having more services on the hypernode side. And in order to have enough hypernodes, you will have to incentivize them to run a hypernode, because it also costs money to run a hypernode. And we are planning on running more services on hypernodes. For example, for example, storing data on the hypernodes. And the more data you store, the more space you need, and the more. So in order to have a better incentive for hypernodes, we increased the BIS amount. But the overall total of BIS will almost stay the same. I think it's about 840K less BIS in the year 2029 than before. So it's going to be a little bit less Bismuth in the end.
And what about the Cryptopia, I guess, hack and then liquidation later on?
Yeah, so with the Cryptopia thing, the Cryptopia exchange, like everyone knows, they had about 5.2 million Bismuth in their account. And they got hacked, and all the users, they are waiting for their Bismuth. It's really sad, but you have to also mention that that sort of story happened many, many times before, starting with Mt. Gox. And what you can learn from it, do not store more more cryptocurrency at an exchange than you want to lose or you are able to lose. And right now, we can only wait. We are not the Bismuth team. We cannot do anything in this regard at this time because we don't have access. It's their address. And there's 5.2 million BIS at the Cryptopia exchange, and we are hoping that the owners of those Bismuth will get their Bismuth back. But we cannot promise anything or something because it's something of their business.
Has Cryptopia been in contact with the team at all?
I don't think there has been any. Cryptopia has their website, and they're releasing the news via their own channels, and we can also only read about it. So I know there's a lawyer team in New Zealand who's working on it, and who are they're eligible for the Bismuth and what will happen. But I think, I'm not sure, but they cannot release it to the market at this point because it would not make any sense. Nobody could buy them. You know, I mean, there's not enough volume at the exchanges. So I'm still hoping that they are returning the Bismuth to the users because I heard their servers were in Arizona, and the first act was to even be able to know who owns what. And now they released a news where they're saying that they know now which user had how much cryptocurrency in their account. Before they didn't even know it. And now they know this, and I hope that they are returning the cryptocurrency to the users who own it.
I have more questions even regarding that exchange situation, because I'm using you a bit as like a prototypical proof of work, fair launch project. What is like the type of discussions you have around exchange listings? What is the typical process you go through, and what are the questions being asked, and what are the major hindrances for BIS to get on something a bit bigger, like say Bittrex or something like that, just that people can imagine what the challenges are to get listed as a fair launch project?
Well, usually you have to know that Bismuth is a cryptocurrency which has been coded from the ground up. It's a totally new. It's not a copycat or anything, and exchanges have more work with those type of cryptocurrencies. That means that they need to invest also more because they need to get to know the platform. And well, that's sometimes a problem. And also some exchanges just want too much because you have to pay mostly for being listed. And that's if they're asking too much, we just we cannot pay it. We just say, okay, then we wait and see, try another one. And those were the problems so far.
Are the exchanges straightforward about their conditions, or is it more like a bit of a fuzzy negotiation with most exchanges?
No, I think they're clear. And before we didn't even have. I mean, we didn't have a white paper. That was a problem before, but now our white paper has been released, so that's not an issue anymore because Bismuth started just with code, and later on we decided people are asking for a white paper, so we need to get this problem solved. And the white paper then was written after the code was already working. I mean, usually it's the other way around. People try to write a white paper in order to get people, to get investors read their white paper, even though they might not even read the white paper. But you need to have a white paper, and then later on they start coding after they have their ICO or yeah. So, but with Bismuth, it started from the other side. The code was already. It's never finished, the code, but it worked before the network was working, and then the white paper was written. So it's always it's a different situation, but we are working to get listed on more exchanges and on bigger exchanges.
Another quick comment about the exchange situation. There are some exchanges, most in particular Bittrex, that are looking for projects with like legal requirements. So one thing that Bittrex wants to see is things like legal memoranda that demonstrate that the coin that's being listed isn't considered a security. So that's been the trend of some recent exchanges. And I think I'm not a lawyer, but as far as evaluating whether or not Bismuth is a security, it's not an ICO project. So I mean, the evaluation of that is easier than, for example, like the ICO project that launched as a white paper only. But I personally don't know if the team has explored that area of the equation yet. So.
I'm having a look at your mid and long-term roadmap, and there's some very interesting goals in the pipeline. I'm just wondering, what are the team most excited about implementing down the road, and why?
So one thing I was really excited about to read recently were the mobile wallets in collaboration with Chainzilla. So they're launching wallets on both iOS and Android. And I think that's been one of the big deficiencies of the Bismuth project is that it's not been the easiest to use, especially from the start with the old Python wallet. But recent changes such as the Tornado wallet and now mobile wallet support has me actually be pretty excited on this front. So I'm happy there.
Cool.
Yeah, I also want to add that the Bismuth mobile wallet has been asked for since a very, very long time, and we addressed that by I contacted many different mobile developers or companies who have multi wallets or who provide multi wallets, and Chainzilla it was a very good cooperation with them, and now they have added Bismuth. We first started with RSA addresses, and then we saw that this was really a problem because it took a very long time to generate the addresses itself. So the usability was not very good. So we changed that, and I got to say that within a very short time period, we managed to also offer a different now the ECDSA cryptographic primitive, which has many advantages. For example, it's a lot now easier to generate, to have paper wallets, to have also seeds like you used to have, or you used to have with Bitcoin, where you can have a seed, a 12-word seed or 24 or 25-word seed to generate your public and private keys. So that's for me really interesting that we are now supporting this new address scheme, and nobody took notice of it really much, but I think it's really a big thing because it advances the whole platform a lot.
Cool. I have a question courtesy of a mutual friend and Bismuth admirer, Heretic. Can you elaborate a little on the private smart contract section of the white paper and the planned stealth tokens? What do these things mean exactly?
Okay, I can't talk much about stealth tokens because I don't know. I don't know what Jan is developing there,
Okay.
but the private smart contracts, they are in itself totally different because, of course, you have those contracts are private. That means that you could say that the developers could change code or like they want to, but I think it's, for example, in Ethereum, you have those contracts online, so anyone can see the contract. But you still have a problem if the code is not working like it's supposed to, like we had with the DAO back then, and a lot of Ethereum they needed to do a hard fork in order to change that again. So I would say with the private smart contract, of course you need to have, there is always trust, but you still can run the system. You have the transactions where you can prove if something is working like it's supposed to or not. For the developer side, it's better because he can adjust his code easier and make changes. And if the user all of a sudden sees that there's a difference, he could, as if the developer is not saying what he does, you could still find that because if the transactions are not doing what they're supposed to, then there's a problem. So you can still check up on the developers, but from the developer side, it's better to have private contracts because you are able to update them easier. The contracts you can you can make changes, you can improve the code. It's a lot easy. It's a lot more flexible for developers, but it still means that the users are able still to check if the code is doing what it's supposed to do.
And I think like the biggest advantage of private contracts from my portion is that the understanding that not everyone is interested in everything. So, for instance, if you're not interested in Dragonator, you don't need to run that code on your system or your node that hosts the Bismuth blockchain. So basically, whatever you're interested in, you can run the code / the smart contracts for it and process that without having like this interference of random other contracts that appear on your blockchain. This separation is also important for security, as we've seen as Damian mentioned, the DAO, as well as the parity wallet hack, which was also a failure of public smart contracts. And private smart contract system would generally have less of these problems.
Yeah, I also think that's very important to mention what you just said, that it doesn't, the traffic will not be on all the nodes, only the concerning nodes will run the private contract. So if you're not interested in running a certain application, I mean, why would I run an application I don't want to be, to use the service from? So I think it does make sense that the nodes only run the services or the plugins they need and not all the other ones. So from a scaling perspective, I think that's the key point.
Great, thank you both.
Hey guys, I'm gonna have to run, but I just want to say thanks to Jim and Damian for jumping on, and obviously I'm a big fan of the platform, so I'm looking forward to see where it goes and see what new developments come out, and hopefully get some bigger exchanges and more price action to kind of make up for what happened with Cryptopia. But yeah, I'm sorry to have to run like this, but I appreciate the time, guys.
All right,
Absolutely. Thank you, Chase.
thank you, Chase.
So
See you,
take care.
Chase.
Yeah. So I just wanted to maybe add one more time that what I like about Bismuth is it's very extensible via the plugins, like we talked before, and it's built like a Lego-like system where developers can do their things, try out their application on their own on a node, because you need a node in order to your own running main node in order to use your application. And I think it's a good way, or it could be a good way for addressing the scaling issue. And there are lots of possibilities already with the combination of the open field and also so you have a way to store data, the proof of the data on chain, and you have the operation field for operations. So I think it's a good concept to me, and I'm really interested how this will play out in the future.
And for me personally, I think is the commitment of the dev team that makes Bismuth what it is. From individuals like Drazel, Galia, Raish, as well as Damian, the dev himself, Jan Kusera. I think really having that solid dev team that's willing to put in the effort to basically try to do code revisions, try to maintain a project, even in the face of maybe like unsatisfactory price action, is really important for a project for its longevity. And I think that's what attracts me to Bismuth the most.
Yeah. Sure. You want to go first, Red?
I will, because you're always far more eloquent than I am, Monk.
Yeah.
In finishing. So, yeah, the Bismuth team, they seem to comprise of a bunch of humble geniuses, to be honest. The chain is written from scratch, as you've said. There's a lot of innovation here. I mean, it's experienced a full market cycle, much like the rest, and probably a bit of extra bad luck in the form of Cryptopia. There aren't many real projects I'd consider as undervalued, but Bismuth is definitely one of those. I think we just have to get 4chan Biz to realize it's their kindred spirit, and we're golden.
Yep.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, Bismuth, my love, Bismuth, my pain. It was one of my most painful holds, not only because of the pretty substantial monetary loss, but also because for me, business is kind of prototypical of the current unfairness in the market, where like a solid project is really struggling hard to gain recognition, to get a little bit of exchange visibility, while some vaporware bullshit can raise 150 million on Binance in a night. This is not the good market situation for the kind of innovation I'm looking for in crypto. And I'm really, really happy to have heard again. I know business very well, so I knew this before this call, but to have heard again that the team is just toiling on, that they are focusing on delivering, that they're focusing on code, and that they start to raise some awareness around the project. But overall, business for me is pretty typical of a project that I would like to see thrive, that I would like to see innovate, and that for me, even at these like meager 2 million market cap compared to many other projects, is kind of like fairly valued for crypto, because I mean, let's face it, all these things are highly experimental and they need to prove themselves first. So I'd rather like to see things grow from the bottom upwards than kind of like just grind down from 150 million or even a billion valuation like it's being practiced right now.